Before there were gods, there was nothing. Just a gap where the world would eventually be. The Greeks called it chaos. Then, out of that emptiness came the earth, Gaia, broad, solid, and alive. Beneath her opened Tartarus, a pit as deep below the ground as the sky above it. Gaia created the sky, Ouranos, and he stretched over her from horizon to horizon. Together, they began to have children. They had 18 of them, in 3 very different groups. First came the 12 Titans, enormous gods shaped like men and women. Among them were Rhea and Kronos, the youngest of the Titans. Then came 3 Cyclopes, giants with a single eye in the middle of the face. And finally came 3 creatures called the HundredHanders, each with 100 arms and 50 heads. Ouranos, their own father, couldn't stand the sight of them, so he forced the children back down into their mother Gaia and sealed them away. Soon, all 18 were trapped inside, crushed together while Gaia carried them in constant pain. But Gaia was the earth itself, and even imprisoned within her, the children could still hear and answer their mother. Eventually, she'd had enough. Gaia made a great jagged sickle from gray adamant, the hardest substance she could find, and presented it before her sons and asked, "Which one of you is willing to use it against your father?" None of the Titans moved, except the youngest, Kronos. That night, Ouranos descended over the earth as he always did, and Kronos waited in his mother's hiding place with the sickle in his hand. As soon as Ouranos settled over Gaia, Kronos reached up, grabbed his father with one hand, and brought the sickle down, severing his manhood. Then he mic-dropped it into the sea. Ouranos screamed and tore himself away from the earth, never to touch Gaia again. His blood rained across the land, and where it struck the ground, new beings appeared. The Furies, goddesses of revenge, armored giants, and the nymphs of the ash trees. What fell into the sea created a white foam that drifted towards Cyprus, where a fully grown goddess stepped from the surf, with grass growing wherever her feet touched the shore. This was Aphrodite, goddess of love. With Ouranos defeated, the children trapped within Gaia were finally free, and Kronos took his father's throne. But before the new king could enjoy it, Gaia and the wounded Ouranos gave him a warning. One day, they said, your own son will overthrow you, exactly as you overthrew your own father. Kronos believed them, so he began removing anything that might threaten his throne. First, he seized the Cyclopes and HundredHanders and dragged them into Tartarus. That was where Kronos buried his brothers. But the prophecy hadn't said anything about a brother. It said a son. Kronos would go on to marry his sister Rhea, and together they gave birth to 5 gods: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. Kronos swallowed every one of them. But gods cannot die, so the 5 children remained alive inside their father's stomach, trapped in the dark. When Rhea became pregnant for a 6th time, she refused to lose another child. She went to Gaia for help, and together they arranged for the birth to happen in secret on the island of Crete. There, inside a cave on Mount Dicte, Rhea gave birth to a son, Zeus. She left the baby hidden on Crete and returned to Kronos carrying a bundle wrapped like a newborn, but inside was a stone, not baby Zeus. Kronos didn't unwrap it. He barely looked. He simply tipped back his head and swallowed the whole thing. Meanwhile, on Crete, armed young men called the Curetes danced around Zeus's cave, smashing spears against bronze shields so that no cry from the child inside could be heard. And Kronos sat on his throne with a rock in his stomach, convinced he had defeated the prophecy. Zeus grew up in hiding. When he was finally ready to confront his father, he didn't arrive with an army. He arrived with a spiked drink, mixed for him by Metis, the wisest of the goddesses, who knew exactly what it would do to Kronos. Kronos drank it, doubled over, and began to vomit. The stone came up first, then Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, and finally Hestia, the first child swallowed and the last one out. All 5 emerged fully grown, stepping into a world they had never seen. For the first time, the 6 children of Kronos and Rhea stood together. But freeing them was only the beginning. Kronos still held the throne, and the other Titans still stood behind him. If the younger gods wanted the world, they were going to have to take it by force. The two sides smashed into one another with spears, blades, boulders, and fire. But there was one problem. They were immortal. Every god who fell eventually got back up, and every battle ended with both sides ready to fight again. After 10 years, neither side was any closer to winning, so Zeus went looking for allies his father had forgotten about. He descended into Tartarus, all the way to the bottom where the Cyclops and HundredHanders were still imprisoned. At the bottom, Zeus killed their jailer, a monster named Campe, and freed the prisoners from their chains. The Cyclops immediately went to the forge and crafted 3 gifts for the gods. For Poseidon, they forged the trident, an extension of his divine will to command land and sea. For Hades, a helmet of darkness that made its wearer invisible even to gods. And for Zeus, they created the weapon that would become his symbol forever, lightning you could hold in your hand. The next time Zeus came down from Olympus, the tide of the war changed completely. He hurled thunderbolts into the Titans, one after another, until forests caught fire, the sea boiled where it met the land, and the ground shook so violently that the tremors reached the floor of Tartarus. The Titans staggered through smoke and lightning. Then the HundredHanders joined the attack. 3 brothers, 100 arms each. 300 boulders rose into the air at once and came crashing down onto the Titan line. The oldest gods in the world disappeared beneath a landslide, and the war was finally over. Kronos and the defeated Titans were chained and thrown into Tartarus. Poseidon sealed the pit behind bronze doors, and the HundredHanders remained below to guard them. The family's oldest prisoners had become its new prison guards. Until now, the 6 children of Kronos and Rhea had fought as one family. With the Titans defeated, they finally had a world of their own, and now they had to decide what each of them would rule. The 3 brothers drew lots. Poseidon, he drew the sea, its storms, and everything beneath the waves. The trident forged for him during the war became the symbol of his power, and from then on Poseidon ruled as god of the sea. Hades, his lot took him in the opposite direction, to the realm beneath the earth. There, with the dead as his subjects and the helmet of darkness at his command, Hades became god of the dead and lord of the underworld. And then there was Zeus. He drew the sky. Thunder, lightning, rain, and the heavens themselves became his to command. Thunderbolt in hand, Zeus took his place as god of the sky and king of the gods. But the brothers were only half of Kronos and Rhea's children. Their 3 sisters had survived their father too, and each would become part of the new order. Hestia was the eldest. While her brothers ruled enormous kingdoms, her power centered on something quieter, the sacred fire burning at the heart of every home. She became goddess of the hearth. Demeter took power over the living earth. Grain, crops, the harvest that kept people alive, all of it was hers, making her goddess of the harvest. And finally, Hera took her place beside Zeus on Olympus. She became his wife, the highest-ranking goddess in the new divine family, goddess of marriage and queen of the gods. The children Kronos had tried to erase now ruled everything he'd left behind. For 3 generations, power had passed from father to child through fear and violence. Ouranos had ruled until Kronos overthrew him, and Kronos had ruled until Zeus did the same. Now, for the first time, the throne seemed secure. But the defeat of Kronos didn't end the family story. It had only made room for the next generation, because Zeus was about to have children of his own, and they would fill Olympus with some of the most famous gods in Greek mythology.